is a card that says on it Earl Marks. Earl Marks was the second Eagle Scout. So this is a copy of Earl Marks's card. His original card is gone. We don't know where it is. But this is a copy of his card. What's unique about the card, other than it is the second one, is that the signatures down here is not West's signature. You have a listing of West and Seton and Dan Beard as the top three. But all Eagles early on were awarded by the National Court of Honor of the Boy Scouts of America. You did not get your Eagle through your council. Even today you don't do that. But there was a board, a council, National Council, Court of Honor. I think there were about 5 or 6 guys that sat on that council. The 3 that you see listed here, then there was a secretary, and then maybe 1 or 2 others. And they reviewed every one of the applications that came in. What's funny, you see the date on here, September, I think that'll say September 12th. Is that what it says? Mm-hmm. September 12th. His Eagle's awarded on September 12th. The next Eagle, which is the number 3 Eagle, his card has September 13th. And the next 5 Eagles, their cards say September 14th. The Court of Honor met, and on the one day they gave 1, the next day they gave the next, and the next day they gave 5 to 5 boys, 2 adults and 3 boys from the same troop up in New York, West Showcam, New York. I call them the Showcam 5. But this tells you who the signatures were, whether it was done by machine or hand, any information on the back of the card, what address is on the card, what the color of the card was, what the printing year was, and the print type, regular block or whatever. And this is the seal. They changed the seals over the years. Sometimes these seals all have New York on it. I think National Council New York something. Later the seal has a different wording on it. So this is the card. I have the copy of that card in a book at home. This is the book I take on the road to show. So that's a type 1. This is a type 1 also. See, signed by Forbush. This one is dated September the 14th. Sidney Clapp was the scoutmaster of the Showcam 5. And so that's his card. Now that card exists. That card is in the hands of a good old boy up in the New England area. And that card and his medal exist. So we know that card is about that. This card is signed by a new guy, Forbush. And it is 1915. And I have this eagle in my collection. The card and the eagle came. This is a Foley eagle, and they came together. Again, it's a type 1. And if it's a copy for me, I write down it's a copy. If it's an original, then I put original up here so that I know what I've got that I'm showing you. Now, this is also a Sackett piece over here, and it's a type 1. But look at the card carefully and see what's the difference.
This one?
See it? You bet. Whose name?
Saget and...
No. In 1917, Seton was deposed. West got rid of him. So they still had cards on the shelf. So instead of going out and reprinting the cards, they simply took the cards and ran a black line through the name until they ran out. Isn't that interesting? That tells you a little bit about what you already know about scouting, which is we're the cheapest people in the world. You know, we use everything up, and that's what they were doing there. That to me, that's just really fun. Here's West's signature, first time. Now this is also a copy, and we got a line through his name there also. Yeah. See, this one has Sackett's name on it for the secretary of the National Court of Honor. West decided here in 18 that his signature is the one that should go on. Now, this is an original signature, as opposed to the machine signature you'll see in a couple of minutes. This is a type 1. The date on this is 20, but you'll notice Seaton's name is not crossed out. Somehow or another, this one got out the door without West, who signed it. See, now that's again his signature, and this over here is his signature as well. We haven't gotten to the machine
Now
yet.
you have these original ones? Is that-
This is an original, and this is an original. See the word original?
Right.
That tells you that those cards are in my collection.
Stephen's gone off of that one.
That makes it a type 2 card. That's the one thing that changes it, is that Seaton has gone off of that. So it's a new card that's been printed, and I call that a type 2 card.
Well, that tells you when the fight was. Or excuse me, the
No, the-
culmination of the fight.
No, the combination was when they ran out. The fight was over in 17.
Yeah, in 17,
Yeah.
that's when they started marking his name off.
Yep.
It was,
Whatever, I'm scratch your name out, you know.
But see, if you don't know any of that stuff and you're looking at the cards, now you have a piece of history. 1917 is the year that West was able to get rid of Seaton.
Want to get rid of them?
He
why?
didn't like them. They didn't like each
They
other.
were fighting continuously.
They were two ego-centered dudes, and they just had at
And
each
he-
other.
But throw in Beard now. I mean,
Well, Beard was actually an old man at the time, and he wasn't nearly he was problematic, but he wasn't nearly the
yeah, but
the
the fight
fighter.
between Seaton and Beard is something else.
Oh, it's another. Well, Seaton was just socially inept. And the way they got rid of him, interestingly enough, is that Seaton was Canadian, had English citizenship, and West made it a rule that all the staff had to be U.S. Citizens, and Seaton would not accept U.S. citizenship. His friends said to him, "Go get your citizenship, you're gonna be gone." And he just said, and wouldn't do it, and West got him. And that was the end of it.
But the idea that he was the founder of the Boy Scouts and not B. Hayden Powell had a lot to do with it too.
Well, Seaton always thought that Powell stole from him,
Yes. I know.
as opposed to the other way around. He
Bear
always-
was in on that too.
Well, he did a little bit.
Well, Seaton predates Powell because he was doing stuff in 1901, 1902 with his boys, and the history there is a phenomenal fun.
They were writing 1920 on these, no, the 1 was already there, so
That's right.
191, but then they wrote 20 over it.
Yep. That was another thing that they did, that was
You
sort
see
of
that on
cheap.
quite a few cards.
Now, this is a copy, and on this one, they're doing the overwrite that you're talking about. This is a type 2 card. Now, this is a type 3 card here, and it's type 3 because the 19 is only 19, not 191 for them to add on. So it's a different card.
You picked that up pretty quickly.
Well, I cheated, I read that he wrote.
Oh,
Well, that feels good that you read it and it worked. And now, there's a type 4. The type 4 changes, they put a 2 in, 19, they made
how
it put
did
a
you
2 in.
acquire these originals?
Just the way you require things in trade, people giving it to me, stuff being available, people knowing that I'm doing. I've gotten a lot of things, as you well know. When people know you're doing it and you're doing good things with it, you're not selling it and all that, they want their stuff to remain.
Yeah.
And so they give it to me because they know it's not gonna end up in a trash heap someplace. Now they're moving from printed, our handwritten stuff, to type stuff. And here you can see the difference between here and here. Now you start to see the machine, 1925. And they're doing it with a typewriter instead of doing it by hand.
How many Eagles were we awarding around those years?
I don't know the numbers in those years, but I would guess 2,000 to 3,000 would have been, because by the time he's starting to put them in, there's 6,000 and 8,000. So I would imagine 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 through the 20s.
Per year.
Now, moving right along, West signs them. Then about 1930, West is not the only signer. Now we have a whole sequence of signers. The President of the United States, because he's the honorary president of the Boy Scouts. The Vice President, or I mean, not the Vice President, but past President of the United States who's still alive, because he was the honorary president.
So he's honorary vice president.
No, he's just an honor, yeah, what's it say, honorary vice president?
Yeah.
And here's an honorary vice president. This is Livingstone, who for years had been the president of the Boy Scouts. And this is McAdoo, who had been years a president. And here is the president. Can you read that name? Schiff.
Oh,
This is Martin Schiff.
he was only there for a year,
No, he was there for 2 months.
2 months.
Mortimer.
This is a fascinating card. He died. They elected him as they elected him as president, and two months or 3 months later, he died. And the guy who
A year
had been the
later,
president prior to him was put back into the presidency. His name was Keats, I think.
A year
You'll
later,
see
we
here.
got the reservation.
Yeah, this is the Schiff that the Schiff reservation was named after. It came out of his family. So this is actually a pretty rare card because it's not around a lot. But this, they putting all those, and down here, if you look real carefully, it'll say local scout executive, or so that you could actually get local signatures on it as well.
And
there it is.
interesting
See
thing, they've been putting all those signatures on the merit badge cards since 1920.
Now see, Schiff is gone and Keats's name is back as the president here.
Those look like originals.
Well, where's Head? Wait a minute, wasn't Head there?
And maybe it's Head instead of Keats,
Yeah,
it's Head.
because Head wouldn't quit, if you remember.
Well, he did quit, that's why
Finally.
Schiff, but as soon as Schiff died, had come back in and stayed there. That's his name,
Schiff
Head.
was gonna be in for longer, except that Head wouldn't quit.
Yeah, here it is.
He was there for 10 years.
Walter W. Head. He was there maybe even longer than that.
Okay, yeah.
So this one, you can see the local signatures on here as well. So the card came
T in
in,
there, 'cause
the
my
local
legal
signatures were
companies,
added, and then
TSPA
the kid got
companies
his
will
card.
put T.
And the same thing was done over here.
It's a stamp.
Yeah, some of these are stamped. Now, this is a cool card. What do you see about that card that's different?
I'm gonna do like you to read that.
Yeah, read the thing and then you'll be able to answer. What's missing?
On behalf of the National Council.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
Same to them.
Coolidge died. So if you want to know when Coolidge died, somewhere around 1932, 33, Coolidge died. And they made the card, but they just took his name off. They didn't squeeze things together. They just used the same format. And Coolidge's name disappears because he died. And there's not much more that's in, oh, yes. Then the card for just a very short time. Up until this point, the card had nothing on the back. Then they did this card, which is completely different than anything that they had done. That is just really a weird card. But they put this on the back of the card. For the first time, there was something on the back of the card. This card lasted about a year. 1934, I think, is the date on here. Probably 1934, 33 in that era. And then they went right back to this card again, and they put the thing back on there. And this was the 1930 kind of thing. Now, at this point, if you look carefully at these cards, maybe I've zoomed by them. Some of these cards, you'll see the boy's name, and it'll be crossed out here, and it'll say Commissioner, Scoutmaster, Rover, a variety of, because they were giving these cards to adults. You know, you had adult eagles during this period of time. And so if you had them, there you go, there's one with Assistant Scoutmaster on it.
The Assistant Scoutmaster Patrol, it says.
Is that what it is?
But the card is of the blank patrol, and they just put Assistant Scoutmaster in there,
Yeah.
so it says that the Assistant Scoutmaster Patrol.
I think probably back here there's some more.
When did they quit giving eagles to adults?
Here's a Sea Scout. Sea Scout, here.
Oh, Assistant Scoutmaster.
Yep. They stopped giving, the last time an Eagle Scout could, an adult could earn an Eagle Scout if he wasn't handicapped, was 1965.
65, it was that long, wow.
Yeah, a lot of councils will cut it out ahead of that.
1948 is when the dictum came out from National. We would discourage you from doing this, but they left it to the local council to make that decision.
Between that time.
And from 48 to 65, some local councils quit and eventually, but the way they finally got rid of it was really cool. They didn't do it by age, by saying a kid had to be 18, less than 18. They did it by telling in the Eagle Scout requirements that you had to hold a boy office for 6 months.
Uh-huh.
So there was no discrimination issues around age. If you were 19 years old, you weren't in the Boy Scouts anymore, you couldn't hold a boy office. And so you couldn't get the Eagle. It was really slick. Now here's one that says Scoutmaster. Neighborhood Commissioner. So these were done until, well, that's Eldred's Eagle. That's the way Eldred's Eagle looks today in the museum out in Texas. Here in Texas, just down the road a little bit. Now, and when Fretwell came in, Fretwell decided that he needed to change things to make it better for the kids to carry the cards around. And so his cards start and they look like this. And at the same time he did that, he created the Eagle's wall certificate. This is a later one because it's got the wrong eagle on it, but this is what the wall certificate looked like. I couldn't bring those because I didn't have enough room in my bags. But this is the size of the wall certificate, and it had this logo on it. And so it was a miniature, this was a miniature of this, essentially, when they started doing the wall certificates. And at that time, you could write in and say, I got my Eagle in 1932, could I have a wall certificate? And they would send you a wall certificate with a 1932 date on it, but they didn't come into being until 1943. But so you can find these with earlier dates on them, but if you check the signatures, the date will not match the signature of the President of the United States or whatever. So you have to be careful about looking at the dates. So when they first started, this is the way it looked, and on the back of it was the writing, and there was a place for you to make your signature that you were going to do what it said. That was pretty cool. And then they took that off, and then they changed things. Over here it says Scout Troop of, and this has got Head and Fretwell and Roosevelt. Is that Roosevelt's signature?
It is.
Yeah. This one is the same card except it's got Truman's signature. And then they got to the point that they took off Scout Troop and they made it Scout Unit, so the card changed. And then they took the Scout off and just left Unit. And then they took Unit off and left off. And you've got, now here's Schiff. This is the earlier Schiff's son, John Schiff, who became the president of Scouts at that point. And then they started to document them. In 1953, they put the print date on it. See, the date means 10M means 10,000. Were printed on, was that a 1 right there?
Yeah,
January of 1953. And so from that point on, it's easy to collect them because you're collecting them by what's on the print date. Of course, you have to know what are the print dates out there. And every so often, I run across one where, oh, I don't even have that print date. So, you know, that kind of thing. But all of them have on it the honorary president, the president, and the chief scout executive. Until we had messes around Nixon, and then there was a period when there was a scout executive was fired, and it was 6 months and there was no scout executive, so there's no scout executive signature on it. And again, you can document what's going on in scouting and what's going on in the world by signatures that are missing or signatures that have changed and so on. The cards reflect that.
How about 2009?
2009, yeah, we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. So these are the cards. This design changed just about Kennedy's time. So here's a card with Kennedy's signature on it that's dated 61. Kennedy? Kennedy?
That's 63. That's 64.
64, yeah. Isn't that fun?
Well, you wasn't alive.
You're right.
Cards were printed.
The cards were already printed, and they hadn't made the shift yet. See, the cards were printed, 15,000 of them,
63.
in August of 63, and he was killed in November of 63. So this card ran till it was done, and then they did this short run. This is the one that was the fun for me. They did 7,000 cards in 164, and they changed the name to Johnson. 7,000 cards, that's nothing. Immediately after that, they changed the card. So Johnson's name appears on this card and on the new card. He was the transition, he was president in the transition when they went to this design. And then they started to produce the certificate to look again like the card, so that was a family of cards. Now let's see if we can find, I can lay my hands on some here where there's the signatures are. There's one. Gerald Ford, and the president, no Scott executive. That's what it was. The Scott executive got canned. And there was about a 6-month period where we had no Scott executive. And so they
You
made
mean
the
the
cards.
chief, yeah.
Chief Scout executive,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
He got canned. There was a period of time. So the card reflects the fact that for that period of time, there was no Chief Scout executive.
How many times have we canned this chief scout exec?
That's the only time. That's the only time where it shows up in the cards that way. Now this is a card that I cannot find. This is a copy, and I cannot find one of those in original condition. It's unique and it's got the box. So here's one over here as well. It's a Type 3 wallet, and those are one that I would really like to get. Then the cards changed in their look, and they started to eventually, instead of telling you how many they made, the print dates changed on them, and they just had the 1982 printing, 1983, 1984, that kind of thing. And the seals changed along the way as well. One year, they did the cards and the certificates on a one sheet of paper and perfed them, so that whenever you got your certificate, it was not the full 8.5 by 11, it was a smaller certificate, and your card was attached to it, and you pulled that off and tore it and it perfed, and so you see the perforations around on the card. The last year of the card, wallet card, was 1991.
They quit it after that?
They quit making a paper card or a card, a wallet card. And in 1992, they instituted the credit cards.
Plastic cards.
Yep. How am I doing? Fun? Learn anything?
Wow, what a lot of work you've done.
Now, then they instituted these guys. Now this is from 1992. This is the President of the United States, President of the Boy Scouts, and the Chief Scout Executive. These are the signatures that appear on the plastic cards. This one here, George Bush, John Clendenin, and Ben Love.
Ben.
That card does not exist, even though that is a set. I have been in touch with a number of kids and adults who got their Eagle from June 1st to January 31st. And none of those cards have got those three signatures on it. So what happened is that this is the transition year in the presidency. And so it's a short-term thing for Clendenin. So why put in new plastic cards when you still have cards left over? So through the time of this, when Clendenin was on, Bush was still the president, and so they kept those cards. And then when Bush left the presidency and Clinton came in, Clinton's signature went on, Clendenin's signature remained on because he was still the president, and that was the next card. So I'd be happy to have somebody surprise me, but so far I can't do that. So I call it card 2 because that's where it could be. But to my knowledge, there's no examples of that card. These cards change by the people's signatures, but also the cards change because there is some of the cards have a little different shadowing on them, and I've noticed that, and so I've said that those are changes in the cards. The biggest change, though, that took place in these cards took place when Tico Perez became the national commissioner. And Tico said, we ought to have the key 3 on the cards. We've got the president, and we've got the chief scout executive, and we have the president of the United States. But we don't ever acknowledge the other key 3 person, the commissioner. So Tico lobbied, and they did it, and NISA changed its approach and became the Alumni Association of the Boy Scouts of America for Eagle Scouts, and they designed this new card. It's got this eagle on it, and you can see here's the president, and Tico's the commissioner, and there's a chief scout executive, and we go back to having something on the back of it, which is the NISA logo, and an invitation for people to become part of NISA. This is what you're talking about, 2009, no Obama signature. There was a year, 2009, when there was no Obama signature. But in 2010, January the 19th, we received permission, and Obama's signature went onto the card, and since 2010, January 19, all Eagle Scouts have received a 4-signature card with the president, the honorary president, exec, and the commissioner.
So why wasn't it on in 2009?
It was not on in 2009.
But why?
Well, there are those who would say the reason why it wasn't on was because Obama was against scouting. That's the popular opinion that's out there. The truth of the matter is that it took a year for us to get through the mechanics of the request and the approvals and running through all of the red tape that needed to be run through for the signature to come.
How could
He
it take a
did.
year?
I would defer to the man on your right who probably knows the story better than I do. What I'm attempting to tell you is that the image that was portrayed in scouting about Obama was not a fair image.
Political.
There was a way for people to take shots at a person that they didn't like as the president, and we have in the scouting movement, whether we like it or not, the scouting movement is probably center and right of center in its politics. So he's not a popular president in the scouting community.
I'm just curious what took a year to get some guy to sign.
He's going to tell you.
Yeah, no, actually, I was the NISA office manager and ordered that last batch of cards with Bush's signature. And we tried to plot it out so we'd run out exactly when he left office.
Oh, you're talking about like
The last Bush card.
the last George
Right.
W. Bush.
And so we ran out right after that, and I guess it took a couple of months to get his permission. So we had to do another year's worth of cards. Just print up 40,000 at a time. And
So you did print them up way in advance, 40,000.
With whose signature?
Without Obama's signature.
We took Bush's off, printed another year's worth without.
Any precedent?
So that's why it didn't take a year for him to agree to sign it.
Well, it
Yeah,
did.
We had permission a little bit earlier, but it did take a while. And that's the part that I don't know.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
The scouting in its wisdom doesn't throw anything away. Probably at about 20,000 or 30,000 cards, we had the Obama signature, but we still had 10,000 cards in stock.
So you use those up first?
So he used those up before he put his signature on, which then made Obama look like he wasn't getting a signature on until.
Okay. Have you documented it in this?
I've documented here that Obama's signature came
But the
available.
reasoning for it.
I can't do that because I can't tell you that that's accurate. I can only tell you that that's what I believe. If I put it in there, it becomes gospel, and I can't document it. And if somebody comes along and